Hello and welcome. This is Ruta Naujokaite and you're listening to Lithuanian Dream Podcast, a podcast exploring ideas about contemporary Lithuania. So what were three biggest learnings of you running the Networking Institute?
Well, I think I mentioned a couple of things about networks being organic and then being intentional. And I think it was a realization that networking is not taught at school or college. You know, you go to university and you learn all this knowledge and you learn information, but you don't learn skills. And I think networking skills will last you throughout your life. The knowledge and information you learn will probably be out of date very quickly. So I think that's a fundamental thing to know. The second thing I realized was that to be a really good networker, you have to be a great listener. And we live in a world where most people don't listen. Most people only listen to prepare what they're going to say next. Most people are either speaking or preparing to speak, but not really hearing what the other person is saying. So I realized that I had to become a generative listener, not just to listen to what somebody is saying, but what they're going to say next. Listen like an interviewer, to see listening as a form of activity, to realize that to be a great conversationalist, sometimes you don't have to say very much at all. So that was a big lesson for me. And then the final lesson I learned was the power of serendipity, of luck, of random chance. I think that's an interesting concept, the notion that you can make luck happen for you in your network. And most people think luck is like random chance. It's like a bolt of lightning from the blue. It's like winning the lottery. But actually, I think it's more like a gentle wind that's always at your back. And that if you do certain things, go certain places, you increase the chance of luck happening. And luck doesn't happen lying in bed or sitting at your desk. Luck happens when you're in motion. It happens when you're out and about. It happens when you change your routines. It happens when you put your talents on display. So that would be my main points.
So could you give some examples of how you encourage luck in your own life in this way?
You know, when I was in Australia and I set up that business organization, I wanted to try and find somebody who would head it up. Now, you wouldn't know this name in Lithuania, but the number one Irish business person in the world was a guy called Tony O'Reilly, and he was the CEO of the H.J. Heinz food company in the United States. And so I wrote him a letter. And I said, would you head up this new business organization in Australia? And he wrote back and he said three things. He said, yes, I will head it up. Secondly, I'm coming to Australia because I'm buying newspapers. And thirdly, would you be free to meet for lunch? This was great. I'm a nobody and he was a big star. So I said, I'd love to meet you for lunch. I met him for lunch and I worked for him for 21 years. So that's my point about, you know, one introduction, one conversation can change your life. But they don't happen lying in bed. They don't happen looking at a screen. They happen when you're out and about. And that was, for me, the best example I can think of.
Yes, for sure. And even if it's not a deal, some business deal, it could be inspiration that somebody that is so similar to you had achieved so much. And I think this is the biggest value for me, at least, that I can see people who do incredible things and they're not that different than me.
Yeah, no, that's true. And, you know, I think, you know, I was lucky to have spent time with people who are good at networking. And I'm a great believer that you are the average of the people you spend time with. Spend time with optimistic people, you become optimistic. Spend time with pessimistic people, you become pessimistic. Spend time with great networkers and you learn from them. So I'm a fan of that.
I remember Maya Angelou wrote that the words we use slowly get into our carpets, our wallpapers, and in our soul. So it's the same with the people around us. They slowly become part of our identity.
Yeah. She said an interesting thing. She said, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter what you say. It only matters how people feel about you. And I think she's very strong in all that emotional area.
Yes, and marketing, everything, sales is based on trust and understanding that, you know, I can trust this person to deliver. Yeah. And it mostly comes to human interaction.
Yeah, I mean, Dale Carnegie wrote the best book about networking back in the 1930s, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's in every airport bookshop today. It's sold 50 million copies. And the thing he says is people do business with people they like and trust. So there's likability and trustworthy. Those two things, they don't cost anything to get, Don't cost you any money to be likable or trustworthy.
Exactly, but then you need to deliver as well. Like you cannot trick. You're.
Yeah.
And for sure. And in another interview, referencing you again, you said that Diaspora is like university alumni network.
Yes.
So it's sort of a relationship with something. The place, it could be a city, it could be a university, and then there are different successful alumni groups or diasporas. So Indian, Irish, and Israeli, Jewish. Could you tell us a little bit more about these diasporas and what are their strengths or something that we can learn as well?
I think when you look at the history of diasporas, sometimes one common denominator they have is what we call victim diasporas. So, in Ireland, we had a famine 100 years ago. 1 million people died in 5 years, 1 million people emigrated. That was our kind of tragedy. There was the Jewish Holocaust, was their tragedy. The Armenian genocide was their tragedy. And so very often that's the thing that, brings diaspora groups together, is a certain degree of victimhood. But what's interesting is that what was just the preserve of a small number of countries is now being, followed by over 100 countries now have diaspora strategies. And this is fascinating because what everybody realized is that the people who left and emigrated and went away, in the old days, they were gone and they were gone forever. Your geography equaled your destiny. It also equaled your identity. If you lived in Southern California, that's who you were. But now you can live in Southern California, but be very connected to Lithuania or Scotland or Poland. So you can live a hyphenated life, we call it. It'll be Californian and Lithuanian. You can be Californian and Scottish. So that's interesting. So, but now it's been even more interesting because of COVID and remote working and working from home, etc. It's now more important what you do than where you are. I think that's a really interesting new dynamic in diaspora engagement. So, for example, Google have their European headquarters in Dublin. 10,000 people work there. 8,500 of them are not Irish. They're young kids from all around Europe who want to join Google, and they come to Dublin and they work here. Now many of them have gone back to their home countries and they're still working for Google. So it's important what they do. Where they are is not so important because technology and what we're doing today is making this connectivity so much more possible. So lots of interesting dynamics in the space happening.